Shalom, all praise to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, double lines of the Apostles GMS. This is Allah coming next from the video. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on Matthew chapter 11, verse 7 and 8, and going to why Yahweh Shah mentioned about those that are in the with soft raiment on sits in the king's houses, and how that relates to John and his garment made out of camel hair. So let's begin. Let's go to Matthew 11 and 7. John the Baptist is what I'm speaking of. Matthew chapter 11 verse 7. It says, "And as they departed, Yahweh Shah began to say unto the multitudes concerning John," speaking of John the Baptist, What went ye out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken with the wind?" So Yahweh Shah said, did you go into the wilderness to see a reed shaken in the wind? Now that wilderness is talking about the wilderness of Judea. Let's get that real quick. Matthew chapter 3 verse 1. "In those days came John the Baptist preaching in the wilderness of Judea." That's what we got to get. So you know that John the Baptist was in the wilderness of Judea. Let's go back. Back in Matthew 11 verse 7. "And as they departed, Yahweh Shah began to say unto the multitudes concerning John, What went ye out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken with the wind?" Did you go out to see a reed shaken with the wind? Now what is a reed? A reed is just a plant. If you ever seen a lake or a pond and you saw like those plants growing out of it, those are reeds. And when the wind blows, they shake. They go from one direction to the next, whatever direction the wind blows. Let's go to that. Let me give you an image of that. You see this right here? This is an example of a bed of reeds. These are reeds, and when the wind blows, they'll shake from one direction to the next. So these are reeds. And it says, did you go out there to see a reed shaking with the wind? And reeds aren't stable. They aren't really stable when the wind blows. They shake towards whatever direction the wind blows them in. So he's saying, what? So Yahweh Shah said, go back to the beginning of Matthew 11 and 7. "And as they departed," this is Yahweh Shah speaking to the multitudes, Yahweh Shah began to say unto the multitudes concerning John, "What went ye out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken with the wind?" Did you go out to see a reed shaken in the wind? But then again, at the same time, look at John the Baptist. John the Baptist is not one that's shaken with the wind. When the Bible speaks about the wind, what does it compare wind to? Yes, sometimes when it says wind, it's literally talking about wind, but wind is also symbolic for other things, such as Ephesians 4 and 14. Ephesians 4 and 14. "That we henceforth be no more children, tossed to and fro, tossed from one direction to the next, and carried about with every wind of doctrine." Just as wind blows things to and fro from one direction to the next, whether it's water, whether it's people, whether it's your clothing, whether it's whatever it may be, that we henceforth be no more children tossed to and fro and carried about by every wind of doctrine. The wind carries things. Paper can blow in the wind, right? The wind carries things about. But this is talking about not being like children tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine. In other words, false doctrines are being compared to winds, because a false doctrine can carry you from one direction into the next. In other words, a false doctrine, the doctrine is false, therefore the doctrine is no stability to it. It doesn't keep you grounded, it doesn't keep you rooted in truth, because it's false. So this as wind can blow things from one direction to the next. That's the same thing that the wind of a false doctrine can also do. It blows you from one direction unto the next. Because being that it's a false doctrine, it's not 100% truth. Therefore, you're always seeking for answers. You go one way looking for this form of knowledge, another way looking for that form of knowledge, and you're never satisfied. Because that wind of a false doctrine is blowing you from one direction to the next. It doesn't keep you stable. This wind carries you about. This wind of false doctrine, it carries you about. That's the reason why people who believe in false knowledge are truly never satisfied. But the scriptures, the Bible, is 100% truth. Therefore, you don't have to go from one direction to the next looking for other aspects of truth, because the Bible quenches your thirst. In other words, it quenches your thirst for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And then it goes on to get even more descriptive. "And carried about with every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men." A so-called magician moves by the sleight of hand. In other words, deception. A so-called magician would take the hand, put it behind your ear, and pull out a coin, pull out a card. You know they didn't really pull it out of your ear. You didn't really pull that card or that coin from behind your ear. But it's the sleight of hand, it's deception. Just as those doctrines are false doctrines, they're deceptive doctrines. By the sleight of men and cunning craftiness. It's cunning, it's crafty. It may appear that it's true, but it's actually not. Because when someone is cunning, they're skillfully deceitful. They're skilled at the art of deception. And these false doctrines that people create, they're so skilled with the art of deception that they can actually get people to believe these things that they're teaching, which causes them to be carried about, whereby they lie in wait to deceive. And these individuals lie in wait to deceive. Alright? The ones that give up these false doctrines by the sleight of men with cunning and craftiness. They lie in wait to deceive, meaning they're in wait to deceive a person with a feeble mind, a person that doesn't have a strong enough spirit to discern between truth and lies. So when Yahweh Shai, let's go back. So when Yahweh Shai asked the multitudes when they saw John in the wilderness of Judea, did they go to see a reed shaking in the wind? What he's asking them is, did you go to see a reed shaking in the wind? It says the reed blows from one direction to the next when the wind moves it. Did you go to see a person that was not stable? A person that was not rooted in truth? A person that was blown to and fro, carried away by every wind of doctrine? Did you go out to see someone who was a false prophet, a false teacher, carried about by false knowledge? Was that what you went out there to see? Because a reed, if it's blown with the wind, it is not stable. It is not grounded. It is not rooted. It does not stand firm. So John was not a reed shaking with the wind. John was stable. John was grounded. John was settled. John was rooted in truth. Colossians chapter 2 verse 6. And as ye have therefore received Yahweh Shai the Lord, so walk ye in him. So as you receive the teachings of Yahweh Shai, that's how you walk in Yahweh Shai. You walk in him based upon what it is that you were taught. Rooted and built up in him. You're rooted in the Lord, meaning he's your foundation. The root is the foundation. And you're built up. So the Lord, you are rooted in the Lord, which is your foundation, and he's the foundation that you're built up from. So everything is built upon the Lord because he's that foundation. And established in the faith. You're supposed to be established in this faith. As ye have been taught, abounding therein with thanksgiving. So you got to be established in the faith. You got to be rooted, built up, and established in the faith as ye have been taught. Is that a word, established?
Strong's G 950.
Bebayao. To make firm, establish, confirm, make sure. There you go. Alright? And it says, abounding therein with thanksgiving. It's not talking about in November. It's not what that's talking about.
Strong's G 2169.
Eucharistia. And it says, thankfulness, the giving of thanks. So when it says abounding therein with thanksgiving, it means giving thanks. Alright? So John was rooted. He was established. He was firm. He was sure. When something is sure, it's definite. If I say, yo, that's a sure thing, that means that's a definite thing. Okay? Meaning, it's going to happen. If I say that's a sure thing, I'm saying that's definite. You're grounded, you're rooted, established, and whatever that thing that you said is sure, whatever thing that you said is definite. So John was rooted, established, and grounded. He wasn't like a reed tossed to and fro with the wind. And I'm going to stop right there. And, matter of fact, I got another thing I'm going to go to real quick. Here's a video of reeds blowing in the wind. See? Reeds blowing in the wind near water. Here's the video. Just to give you an example. See how they're tossed to and fro, carried about by the wind? But John wasn't like that. He stood firm, established, and rooted, and grounded. Make that in the close, and see part 2.